Hello all and welcome, and I am the MGTOW philosopher. And in this video, I'd like to talk about the usefulness of emotions such as anger and hate. Now, before we begin, I made a video entitled, Should Men Hate Women? I suggest you watch it before you continue with this video. It'll give you some much needed context and understanding of the subject matter at hand. I'll put a link in the description. Now, believe it or not, anger and hate are two of the most useful emotions that we as human beings can have. And before we go any further, let's start off by defining our terms, shall we? Because I noticed that many of the people who replied to my prior video on the subject had no clue as to what the word hate actually means. They simply replied with leftist indoctrinated talking points such as, I don't hate women, I hate the system. Or other gems like, I don't hate women, I hate what women have become. A distinction without any real meaning. Oh, and of course the old standbys such as, it's beneath me and it's too much of an emotional investment, or it takes too much energy. Utter nonsense. As we don't say it takes too much energy to be happy, hungry, or excited. Emotions associated with so-called positive feelings, I might add. Of course, anyone with half a brain can see that emotions in and of themselves take no effort to feel, and that any emotion can have a negative or positive outcome depending on how you act upon them. Hate simply gets a bad rap because of the 2,000 years of Christian, Buddhist, and other such cults telling us it's bad for us. Sure, any emotion can be bad for us if we act on it in the wrong way, but so what? To single out hate and label it as off limits or taboo is just the ideologue's way of trying to neuter you, make you unable or unwilling to do anything about the things they do, which would make you hate them if you didn't stop yourself from feeling such emotions. By the way, that is something that men are able to do. That is, stop the connection between the thought and the creation of the emotion itself. Yes, that's right. Men can stop themselves from feeling. Now, that actually does take some energy. However, feelings themselves are natural things. The only thing stopping a man from feeling something is his own self-censorship. That said, it takes no actual effort to feel an emotion, just as it takes no effort to feel hungry or feel happy. That's just another leftist talking point designed to make you inhibit yourself. Another form of control, basically. Now, let's take a look at the meaning of the word anger. A strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. Synonyms for anger: rage, vexation, exasperation, displeasure, crossness, irritation, irritability, indignation, annoyance, fury, wrath, ire, outrage. Okay, so you get the point. And there you go. That's anger in a nutshell. Now, initially, you may ask the question, how is anger useful? I get angry, and then I feel frustrated. It doesn't accomplish anything to be angry. Better to stay calm, not get agitated, not get an ulcer, and deal with things in a rational manner. Anger just clouds your judgment and makes you act impulsively. It can also lead to you feeling hate for other people, and that's just so wrong. Yeah. Besides watching too many hippy-dippy Star Wars movies, I think people saying such things have a stilted view of human emotions. For you see, there's no such thing as negative emotions. People have this idea in their heads that anger and hate are somehow bad, that they don't serve a purpose. The reason for most people feeling that way is because the thought police of the West, meaning the left and the right, have fostered this belief for the purpose of controlling you. However, the truth is that they're extremely useful emotions and can be very productive if you let yourself feel them. Yes, let. Because to not feel them requires an actual effort on your part to counter them by either A, inhibiting their very creation by stopping thought from manifesting as feeling, or B, by countering said emotion once it manifests by using logic, reason, or some other internal means. Essentially talking yourself down by using internal dialogue or imagery of various sorts. And both these skills are useful, and I don't say you should not counter or inhibit such emotions. After all, one should be in control of all their emotions and not the other way around. That includes happiness, excitement, sadness, and any other emotions. Yes, one should be able to inhibit and stop so-called positive emotions as well. And notice I don't argue against controlling one's emotions. No. After all, there are situations where happiness is the wrong reaction. The same with sadness, excitement, anger, or hate. It's important to control your emotions and temper them with logic, reason, and the ability to discern what is acceptable in any given situation. I'm all for self-control. What I'm not all for is the wrong-headed assumption that certain emotions are always bad and should never be felt. That's wholly incorrect. Emotions exist for a reason. The ability to feel anger and hate exists for a reason. Anger and hate are no less valid emotions than love or happiness. Also keep in mind that many a person steals because it makes them feel happy. Many a person gives money to a homeless bum because altruism makes them feel happy. Meanwhile, the bum buys some Thunderbird with the money and dies from cirrhosis of the liver. You simply cannot label emotions as negative or positive and make any form of blanket statement about them in terms of them being off limits to feel. It all depends on the situation and whether or not the emotion will serve you in that given situation. And the same goes for anger or hate. They aren't in any way more or less useful than emotions like happiness or excitement. In fact, they have great power to make people act when they otherwise wouldn't. Now, whether or not that action is for good or ill is up to the person feeling it. But it's not the emotions that are evil. It's the person feeling them who decides to act in a given manner that makes that person's actions right or wrong. It's not the emotion that's evil. So, how might anger be useful? Well, let's look at Pearl Harbor, for example. The Japanese killed thousands of Americans, which angered practically every American citizen there was, leading to the USA becoming involved in World War II. Would the Axis powers have been defeated had America not entered the fight? Perhaps, but perhaps not. And I don't think anyone could argue that the U.S. entering the war was a bad thing. No, it was a good thing. I think we could all agree on that. And we entered it because of anger, outrage. And what about the Holocaust? Do you think Hitler did his darndest to hide the fact that he was cooking people and making soap out of their bones because he thought people wouldn't care? Of course he knew people would care. He knew full well that if such knowledge became widespread that it would generate a great amount of anger and would likely spur more, not less resistance. You see, people who do horrible things, such as autocrats, dictators, authoritarian movements, yeah, they do really bad shit in the name of so-called progress. It's always progress they think they're making. But these people, they rule through fear. However, there's a thin line between fear and anger. And anger can make people overcome fear and act. That's something that any leader, any movement that acts from authority will always fear most. The people they are trying to control rising up in anger. That's why they try to restrict how people think and feel so as to control them. Now, of course, anger has its negatives, but that's true of any emotion. Happiness leads to at least as much suffering as anger or hate, perhaps more in the modern era, as people have labeled whole swaths of feeling as off limits, so there's nothing there to counter things like out-of-control happiness and kindness. Out-of-control kindness, you say? What could I possibly be talking about? There's no such thing as out-of-control kindness or happiness or goodness. What the heck are you smoking, pal? No such thing. Really? Have you looked around at America? Have you looked around at the America you live in lately? Or whatever Western country you might be in? Tell me you don't see the out-of-control kindness that isn't in any way tempered by anger or hate. You don't see it? I guess you don't. Well, let me help you see it. First of all, welfare. Somewhere near 50% of all Americans are on food stamps. Doesn't that make you angry? Or are you simply apathetic to this fact? Okay, how about the 30 million plus illegal aliens in the country stealing American jobs, killing Americans, selling drugs, running sex slave rings of underage kids? Yeah, 30 million plus. You know, no count has been done since the early 1960s. Not since the early 1960s. It didn't stay 11 million for 50 years. And 30 million, by the way, is a conservative estimate. Getting angry yet? No? Do you know someone who's having a hard time finding a job? Are you having a hard time finding a job? No anger yet? Oh, but wait, perhaps you yourself are a high-skilled worker and don't know anyone who's affected by the huge number of illegals entering the country because all your friends are high-skilled workers too. Hence, this stuff doesn't affect you, so it doesn't matter to you, so you're apathetic. So why should you care, right? How about the H-1B visa program allowing 85,000 high-skilled workers into the U.S. legally in 2016 alone? Yeah, Trump is working to change those numbers, but it's still 85,000 less high-skilled jobs going to Americans. That doesn't include the almost 1 million plus new foreign workers every year who come into America in the form of green cards and work permit renewals. You want to learn more about that, you'll find a link in the description. So, more than 1 million foreigners come into America legally for work every year, yet unemployment is extremely high for Americans. Do any of you really believe that there aren't enough workers in America to fill those jobs, that there's no Americans to do those jobs? Really? Of course not. So where's your anger? More apathy, I see. Meanwhile, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars to give free education and free health care to people coming here illegally. That's money being taken from you forcefully in the form of taxes so it can be given to some poor person who did nothing except walk across a border, and now you're being told they deserve your hard-earned cash. Not only that, but you need to pay for whatever kids they have now that they're here, and those kids will have the same rights as your kids, and they're going to be U.S. citizens to boot. Angry yet? No? How about Europe and the Norwegian countries specifically? How about Sweden, which is now the rape capital of the Western world? They've ruined their country because of out-of-control altruism. All thanks to there being no emotions like anger or hate to counter what is quite clearly rampant and out-of-control expression of so-called positive emotions. Are you starting to get my point? Anger and hate are useful. You have no idea how good and powerful these emotions can be for a country, okay? Yes, good. If you don't see the obvious reality of this fact, then I'm afraid you've seen too many Star Wars movies, more leftist hippie bullshit. Let's start by looking at the definition of hate. Intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury, extreme dislike or disgust. There you go, that's hate. It isn't evil. Yeah, Yoda was right about anger leading to hate, but that was all his dumb little green ass was right about. And so what? Yes, anger can lead to hate, and thank goodness it does, because there are some things in this world we should rightly get angry about and hate. Only nowadays, we don't, when we should. Things like welfare, open borders, feminization of men, changing the meaning of words, creating laws to put people in jail for using the wrong gender pronouns, people getting fired from their jobs for holding the wrong ideas, Nazis running around smacking people on the head with bike locks, calling themselves anti-fascists, women crying rape because they had sex with a guy and later regretted it, or because they wanted to make their lesbian lover jealous. And the list goes on and on. These are all things you should not only be angry about, but that you should hate. But where's the anger? Where's the hatred? Oh, we stop ourselves from feeling it and thereby prevent ourselves from doing anything about any of these things. I see. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Yeah, hate requires too much investment of time and energy. Hate is too much work. Hate is beneath me. Hate harms the person feeling it. It isn't worth hating. I should be better than them. That person isn't worth the time required to hate them. Women are not worth hating. I need to be above such things. I won't stoop to their level. All these and many other useless platitudes preaching against hate are utter horseshit. Hate is nothing more than anger taken to the next level. And of course, by association, anger is seen as also being bad and considered wrong. Something which is clearly reflected in the lack of anything other than apathy in the world. A world that is filled with all sorts of bullshit that 100 years ago simply wouldn't have been tolerated. People would have gotten angry and done something about all this shit. There's a lot of egregious shit going on in the world, especially in the Western world at the moment, including the disenfranchisement and vilification of men. They're all things that are worthy, yes, worthy of anger and hate. These are things that should not and would not have been tolerated even in 1900, which wasn't all that long ago, historically speaking. Yet, we tolerate them now because anger and hate have been branded as negative, as harmful things, requiring lots of so-called energy to feel. If you wanted to change the world tomorrow, all you need to do is cast off this belief that anger and hate are bad things, and that instead replace it with the fact that it's okay to feel them. That's it. Nothing more required. If you did that, people in their collective outrage would come together and change things faster than you can imagine. And that, my friends, that is why feelings such as anger and hate have been made into ideas. And then there have been ideas that have been castigated. and labeled as wrong, evil, beneath us, serving nothing but a negative purpose, and therefore must be fought against when they rear their ugly heads. All this bullshit about negative emotions and ideology surrounding certain types of emotions is a very new phenomenon with one purpose and one purpose only: to teach people to at all costs avoid feeling anger or hate. You must control yourself. You must not hate other people, especially women, of course. Meanwhile, the truly despicable who are telling you and everyone else not to hate, well, they have no problem feeling anger and hatred towards you, as they've been taught that you are Nazis. So, of course, it's fine to hate subhuman Nazis. Do you see where this is going? Yeah. Anger and hatred are perfectly valid emotions and are no different from love, hunger, lust, or excitement. They also have a purpose and can all be good or bad depending on how you act on them. Context matters, which is why leftists try to tell you that it doesn't. Every situation is different, and each requires an emotion that fits the context of the given situation. That's why you don't generally see people laughing at funerals or raging and tipping over coffins. Context matters, people. So the next time you see something that would normally make you feel anger, don't inwardly cringe and tamp it down and choose not to feel it. No. Examine the situation and use logic, reason, and critical thinking skills to judge whether or not it's something you should act on and whether or not it's a situation that rises to the level of hate, meaning intolerable or disgusting to you. If it's a situation that would disgust you if you didn't try to stop the feeling of so-called negative emotions like anger and hate, then by all means feel those emotions. As I said, this idea of self-censorship, where certain emotions are labeled positive while others are labeled negative, is nothing more than a reflection of the religion that is the left and the conservative religions of the right. The emotions that the left most fears are your anger and hatred. They're fine with you feeling fear, of course, but they know how easily fear can lead to anger. Hence, the indoctrination all Westerners have received, teaching them that you must not stoop to such a low level, and you need to check that shit before it gets out of hand and leads to you doing something you might regret. Yeah, we've all heard it all. We've heard all that before, and we'll continue to hear it until we get angry enough to do something about it, which will be hard, as most of us believe that such feelings serve no purpose. Oy vey. As for myself, I'm perfectly fine with hate. I hate welfare, I hate parasites, I hate socialism entirely, and I hate the leftist fools who've allowed themselves to be indoctrinated simply because it's easier than thinking for themselves. As for women, well, if I try, I can feel some hate for them as well. It'll take a while, though, to overcome that particular indoctrination and to be okay with hating Western women. Notice I didn't say all women, though, of course, feminism does seem to exist almost everywhere nowadays. Except sub-Saharan Africa, of course. The left could give a crap about that place. They're too poor. I made a video entitled Why the Left Doesn't Care About Africa. I suggest you watch it. Anyhow, in the end, you need to realize that hate and anger are useful and view them as tools, not evil things that require energy to feel or take too much effort, blah, blah, blah. That's just lefty, hippie, mumbo-jumbo designed to make you check yourself when you shouldn't, so that they don't have an enemy who will fight back against their Marxist bullshit. Don't be their pawn, be their enemy. I know, apathy is easy. It's easy not to do a goddamn thing. And in going your own way, you have done something. And maybe that's enough for you. If you're happy with the status quo, fine. Do nothing. But don't you hate that we live in such an environment where you have to fear expressing your thoughts because of the very real-life consequences that exist if you do? Don't you feel anger when knowing that in America, we now have a party line, just like in old communist China under Mao, who was the person who coined the term PC in the first place? It should make you angry, and I think you'd be better off feeling and expressing that anger in some productive way. Now, of course, depending on the situation, both anger and fear and hate can indeed set you free, and so can apathy. Both have a time and place. But never feeling hate or anger? Always checking yourself because anger and hate are always wrong? No. The only thing that's wrong is denying your feelings and labeling some of them off limits while others are perfectly fine and acceptable and even virtuous. No, don't do that. Don't deny your emotions, though you should control them. In the end, it's all about the context of the situation. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.